Try to guess. How many years passed between the first airplane flight in history and the moment a human stepped onto the moon? Just 66 years. That's actually less than the average life expectancy in many countries today. In one historical blink, humanity went from a fragile flying machine made, let's be honest, from wood, cloth, and a bit of optimism, to a 110-meter metal giant powerful enough to challenge gravity itself. But how? How did we figure this out so quickly? Today, we're diving into the evolution of space rockets. We'll see how, long before airplanes even existed, people in China were already trying to reach the moon by strapping fireworks to a chair. We'll find out who the slightly insane genius was that first figured out how humans could reach space, and how we went from wartime ballistic missiles to seriously talking about colonizing Mars. It's going to be epic, a little painful, mostly because of the number of explosions, and very fast.
Let's go!
Let's start with something important. The idea of flying into the sky appeared long before the Wright brothers. In fact, technically speaking, the first rockets were invented in China all the way back in the 9th century. They were actually searching for an elixir of immortality, and instead, they accidentally discovered gunpowder. Ironically, the very experiment that probably shortened the lives of quite a few alchemists led to an important discovery. If you pack this mixture into a bamboo tube and light it, it flies. At first, it was used for fireworks, to scare away evil spirits. Later, it was used in war, to scare enemies, which, honestly, is basically the same idea. These were the first extremely primitive, solid-fuel rockets. And this brings us to my favorite character, Wan Hu, a legendary Chinese official from the 16th century, who might have been the first, and last, follower of the bold stupidity and courage school of astronautics. He decided he was going to fly to the moon. How? Simple. He took a chair, attached 47 of the largest gunpowder rockets he could find, and ordered his servants to light the fuses. This was the first, and very unsuccessful, attempt at spaceflight. There's just one small detail. Historians aren't even sure Wan Hu really existed. Maybe the whole story is just a legend. Okay, fireworks are fun, but how did we get to real rockets? Unfortunately, as often happens in human history, the biggest push wasn't scientific curiosity. It was the desire to kill more efficiently. During World War II, German engineer Wernher von Braun created the grandfather of all modern rockets, the V-2. And this is where the real technological breakthrough happened. The moment that split rocket history into before and after. Up until this point, all rockets were basically gunpowder based. In other words, just overgrown fireworks. You light the powder, it burns, the rocket flies. No pause button, no throttle control. It's like riding a bicycle with a running chainsaw strapped to it. Until the fuel runs out, you're not stopping. But von Braun took a different approach. Liquid fuel. And you know what that fuel was? Ethanol. Yes, basically alcohol.
What is this alcohol?
Because Germany was running low on oil near the end of the war, they produced fuel from potatoes. So yes, the first real space-age rocket was powered by what is essentially distilled potatoes. Why did this change the game? Liquid fuel made it possible to use pumps. Now engineers could control the engine's power during flight. Alcohol mixed with oxygen produced tens of times more energy than gunpowder. The results were shocking. The V-2 could fly 320 kilometers, accelerated to 5,700 kilometers per hour. It was faster than sound. But the most important part, the V-2 became the first human-made object to cross the so-called Kármán line, 100 kilometers above Earth, and actually reach space. Von Braun later said, "The rocket worked perfectly. It just landed on the wrong planet." He dreamed about space, but ended up creating a weapon. After the war, both the USA and the USSR wanted this technology so badly that they started a real hunt for German scientists. They were willing to look past their past just to get the V-2 blueprints. The moral? If you build really good rockets, you'll be forgiven for, well, a lot of things. And here's where it gets really interesting. The Cold War began. The USA and the USSR realized who controls space controls the world. Thus began the space race. At first, the USSR was ahead. In 1957, they launched the first artificial satellite of Earth. Sputnik 1 weighed just 83 kilograms and simply went beep beep. For comparison, a modern communication satellite, like Starlink, can weigh hundreds of kilograms and transmit terabytes of data, while the International Space Station weighs over 400 tons. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. The USA panicked. President Kennedy stepped up and said, "We will go to the moon before the end of the decade." It was a crazy commitment, because at that point, they didn't even have a rocket that could reliably reach orbit without exploding. To get to the moon, they needed a rocket on a completely different level, and Wernher von Braun, now working for NASA, built it, the Saturn V. It was the most powerful thing humanity had ever built. Let me help you visualize the scale. Its height was 110 meters. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben, about a 36-story building. Its 5 first-stage engines burned 13 tons of fuel per second. That's like pouring an Olympic swimming pool full of kerosene into a fire every few seconds. The launch was so loud that the acoustic shockwave could literally ignite grass kilometers away and even damage concrete. It was thousands of times more powerful than the V2. And in 1969, it worked. The rickety Wright brothers airplane had evolved into the Saturn V in just 66 years. After the moon, the space race cooled down. The USA created the space shuttle. It looked futuristic, like a space plane. The idea was cool, make a reusable spacecraft. But the shuttle was only partially reusable and incredibly expensive to operate. Each launch cost around $450 million, even more in today's money. It's like buying a brand new Rolls-Royce every time you need groceries, and then throwing half of it into the ocean. Space remained a club for the richest nations only. Launching 1 kilogram of cargo cost tens of thousands of dollars. Everything changed in the 2000s. Private companies appeared. The most famous of them? Elon Musk's SpaceX. He had one simple but brilliant idea that everyone thought was impossible. Musk wanted to make a rocket fully reusable. What if we could teach the first stage of a rocket to land back on Earth? Old school engineers said, "That's impossible. There's not enough fuel. Physics won't allow it." In 2015, they did it. They taught a rocket to land. Why is this important? The first stage is 70% of the rocket's cost. Musk made it so the rocket lands, refuels, and flies again. Thanks to SpaceX, the cost of sending cargo to space dropped by 4 to 5 times compared to the shuttle. Today, it's the cheapest way to reach orbit. But even Falcon 9 isn't the limit. SpaceX is now building Starship. It's a monster. Even taller than the Saturn V, 120 meters. It's fully reusable, both the booster and the spacecraft. It's designed to carry 100 tons of cargo, or 100 people, to Mars. The idea is to make a flight to Mars cost about the same as a business-class plane ticket. Not right now, of course, but in the future. It's thousands of times more ambitious than the Apollo program. Testing Starship is its own kind of art. The first prototypes flew and exploded so often, SpaceX probably had a standing order for new steel. They call it rapid unscheduled disassembly. Even the first full launch of the entire system ended with the rocket doing a few somersaults in the air and then exploding. But they're learning. Every explosion gives data, and the next rocket flies further. In less than a century, we've gone from war ballistic rockets to SpaceX spacecraft. What was once a weapon has become a tool for building the future. Today, we stand on the threshold of a new era. By the century mark of modern spaceflight, we might already have a permanent base on the moon. This isn't science fiction anymore. It's just a matter of engineering and time. Here's a question for you. Would you risk a flight to Mars if a ticket were available to everyone? Write your answers in the comments. Subscribe, hit like, and see you next time.